Okay, so have you ever stopped to think that maybe texts written, I don't know, thousands of years ago might actually hold some practical answers for us today?
Right.
Because many of us think of, say, the Vedas or Hinduism and picture maybe just ancient rituals, maybe deep philosophy.
Sure, very spiritual.
Exactly. But what if those same sources actually offer a kind of blueprint for getting through our pretty complex modern world?
That is spot on, and that's really what we want to dig into in this deep dive. Our mission, if you like, is to show you how these ancient ideas aren't dusty relics at all.
Okay.
They actually line up, sometimes incredibly well, with modern science, with well-being practices,
Okay.
basically offering you a shortcut to some really valuable insights.
A shortcut. I like that.
Yeah, and what's amazing is these aren't just religious texts, you know? When you look at our sources, they contain some powerful stuff on medicine, psychology, human behavior, even ideas about the cosmos that kind of echo modern thinking about interconnectedness.
That's a really powerful idea, that connection. So maybe let's look at some specifics. From the sources we reviewed, how about we start with how the Vedas sort of lay out these core ideas about health, about daily life.
Good idea.
We're talking Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharva Veda. These are seriously old scriptures, among the oldest in the world.
Foundational texts.
And what really jumped out looking through the material was how practical some of it is. Like, the Atharva Veda talks pretty directly about healing methods, which then evolved into Ayurveda. Now, most people know Ayurveda, right? Natural medicine system.
It's quite well known now.
But our sources really stress it as this whole life approach. It emphasizes your individual constitution, your dosha to find balance, which sounds a lot like personalized medicine today, doesn't it?
It really does. And the texts present Hinduism less as just a religion and more as a complete way of living.
A way of life.
Exactly. Things like waking up early, eating sattvic foods, which basically means clean, balanced, nourishing food meditation, just living with more awareness.
Right.
These aren't just quaint traditions.
Right.
Our sources really highlight how these are essentially scientifically backed habits. We now know they boost physical and mental health. It makes you wonder, how much of what we're discovering now was already understood, maybe more intuitively, way back then.
That's a fascinating point. And this idea of interconnectedness, it even applies to something like karma, right?
Absolutely.
A lot of people might see karma as purely spiritual, maybe a bit mystical.
Fate or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But our sources seem to connect it much more practically to modern science's cause and effect principle. It's basically saying your actions, even your thoughts and words, they create ripples, not just in some spiritual realm, but tangibly in your relationships, your own peace of mind, maybe even your success. What you put out there, well, it comes back.
It does. And that idea of intentional action brings us to a really profound productivity lesson, almost, from the Bhagavad Gita.
Oh.
Yeah, Nishkama Karma, which translates roughly to acting without attachment to the outcome.
Okay, acting without attachment. How does that work?
Well, think about today's hustle culture, right? Burnout is everywhere. This isn't just spiritual advice. It's like a mental hack.
A hack.
By focusing purely on the effort itself, on doing the work in the present moment, and not obsessing over the result, you actually reduce performance anxiety.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You free up so much mental energy. Yeah. It leads to more sustainable, focused work, more effective ultimately.
I can definitely see how that would resonate. Less pressure, more focus.
Precisely.
And if we zoom out a bit, think about how many practices that are trending now, in the West especially.
Like mindfulness.
Yoga.
Exactly. Meditation, mindfulness, yoga. These aren't some new age fads that just popped up.
Not at all. They were described, practiced, documented thousands of years ago in these cultures. Our sources make it clear these ancient texts didn't just suggest these things. They laid out detailed methods for achieving inner calm, for well-being.
It's pretty striking, isn't it, that what the world is kind of enthusiastically adopting now was a cornerstone of these systems for millennia.
Yeah.
The depth of understanding in these texts about, human psychology, how the mind works, even the universe. It's remarkable, especially without our modern scientific tools.
Right. So if we were to boil it down, the core takeaway seems to be this. The Vedas, the wisdom within Hinduism, it's much more than just old chants or religious rules.
Much more.
Our sources show them as sophisticated blueprints, almost, for living mindfully, for balanced health, ethical thinking, finding real inner peace, and that's incredibly relevant today, powerfully relevant.
Which leads to a really interesting question, I think, for you listening.
Yeah.
If things like meditation, yoga, mindful living, which are huge global trends now, if they were understood and written about so clearly thousands of years ago? Well, what other ancient wisdom might just be sitting there waiting for us to rediscover it, to apply it to our lives today?
That's a great thought to leave people with. Sometimes looking back really is the best way to move forward for you.